Good morning, everyone. Shelley here. Today, what we're going to do with our watercolors is we're going to be talking about metallics. You ever heard of them? Ever used them? Ever wondered what to do with them? If you are just joining, make sure that you put a comment in the chat and say where you're from. So let's jump into this and explore what exactly metallic paints are and what they're used for. Okay, so when we look at metallic paints, they have this wonderful shine to them and everything, and don't they seem like the perfect logical choice for painting things like copper or silver or anything like that? Yeah, they kind of do, right? Except for one thing. When we paint with watercolor, we are painting on a 2D surface, like just a flat surface, so we can't get the volume. One of the most common questions that I get when I post some of my paintings of metallic objects are like one like this, right? Something like this, or this silver sugar bowl, or something like this horn. One of the questions I inevitably get is, did I use metallic paint? And the answer is no. I have not used metallic paint on any of those paintings. So why do they make it, and what is it good for? Well, it's definitely something that you can use as a decorative element. And let me just show you what it actually looks like. First of all, this is a set. You'll see that I have a whole range of colors here of metallic paint, and I have, but maybe about 10-15 minutes ago, I added a drop of water to each one. So same rules that I use for my regular paints, as I soften them up before I use them. Otherwise, your paint looks really watered down, and you don't get the richness to it that you're actually looking for. So let's give this a try here, and we're just going to see what some of these colors look like, and then we'll explore some ideas for how to use it. Now, the one thing I would suggest is that if you are using metallic paints or iridescent medium or anything like that, don't put it in the palette with your regular paints. Once it can easily contaminate. It's kind of like glitter. You know what glitter is like? You get cards at Christmas time, and you're still finding glitter till Easter, right? So there's, you're going to get this stuff. It's going to be everywhere. So I'm going to use a separate palette dedicated just to this. All right, so I already have actually some colors here, but if I want, I'm going to use my iridescent medium soon, so I'm going to use this palette for that. So I'll get to that in a minute, but let's just use the paints that I have purchased. These ones I just got online, but you can usually find sets like this at most of the art stores. All right, so let's see what these do. So where I softened it up, it has really sort of softened that paint, and now, just so you can see a little closer, you can see I've got some really nice gold color on my brush. So I'm going to come over here, and let's go up here, and I will just try painting this just to see what this first color is going to give us. And I'll go into the next one, a little bit different, and so on. So we have these wonderful colors in, and I have to keep blotting my brush here. We have these wonderful colors in metallics, and basically what it is it is a color that has flecks, similar flecks of very, very fine flecks of metallic in them as well. So these are all in different colors. You could see I'm getting lots of different shades of this and some interesting ones. That looks like I got some of the next color in it, but I think this one just is that kind of color. It actually has kind of a two-tone thing to it. Sort of a green and a brown at the same time. So we'll see what they actually look like on paper. Lots of different things. Okay, so what would I use these for? If not for something like this, right? Here's the problem. If I'm painting something like this, I mean, you can see that there's lights and like real darks in here. And if I paint with this, I've got one value. And that's it. I've got one value. So I would have to make sure that I had every color in this metallic in every value, or I'd have to start mixing things in, and that's fine. I can do that. That's another one of those that kind of separates. There's a name for that. I forget what it's called, but when paint does that, and there's a lot of paints that are actually designed that way right now. Hello, West Virginia and Thomasburg and all my regulars. Thank you so much for coming. So I'm just trying out all these colors just to see what they look like. And I think it is important, you know, when you see things in a palette like this, that when you see them in the palette, they can often look very different than when you actually paint them. But the reason I put this drop of water on each of these wells is because if I were to, for example, just go along the edge of this where it's already dry, I wouldn't get much color at all, like hardly anything, right? So if I've softened it up like this, I can go into the wet stuff and it's already softened up that paint and give it, now I can get a good strong application of color. So I'm going to go in here. I have no idea what this color is. This one looks like a deep purple or something. It's like a purple brown. Unusual colors. Could be interesting to try something with this. Would I do a whole painting using this? Probably not. But I sure would be able to use these as accents. These would be lovely as cards too, like to use this on, you know, cards rather than, you know, applying actual glitter or something like that. You can actually use these metallic paints and really give it a little bit of something extra. Okay, so I'm just about there. I've got one here that's silvery, which probably won't show up too much on the white paper, but and then we've got a purple. And these metallic paints, you can buy them individually. I think I actually have them individually, you know, because I got enthusiastic one day at the art store. But usually they come in a set like this. So take a look at, you know, what the colors are going to be. This one didn't actually have a sample. This is truthfully, this is the first time I've actually sort of painted these onto a card to see what each of the colors looks like. So I may just sort of hold on to this so I can see what each of them looks like once they're painted. Yes, we have had some hot weather here, that's true. All right, so there's all the colors. They look fairly close to what is here, I would say. Darkest one being this brown for sure, and the lightest being this silvery one. And yeah, and if I were to paint, say, this copper pot, let's see, I would say maybe this one's about the right color for this. Maybe a little bit of that one. So if I were to paint this copper pot, for example, let's move this out of the way. The problem is it doesn't have any shading. Now let's try adding some shading onto this, and we'll see what happens. But here's a little bit of an issue. Okay, so when you actually go to paint your regular watercolors into this, you've got to really be careful, extra careful, not to contaminate your regular colors with this metallic stuff, because those little flecks of metal will get into your regular watercolor. So you really have to rinse that out of your brush. Make sure your brush is really totally clean. I'm going to come into like maybe a sepia or something so that I can get my shadows in here, and I can paint into this. It's still a little bit wet, and I can paint into that, and it's actually not working too badly here, but I'm not going to get quite the same highlights. I would have had to have left the paper white in those areas. You could actually use this metallic paint. Let me tip it just so you can see the metallic aspect to it. Now that's going to look a little different once it's dry, but the thing you have to remember is make sure you separate brushes too is a good idea, Karen, is to make sure you are getting that out of your brush each time. You do have to watch as well, because once your rinse water starts getting a lot of these little flecks in it, and because they get suspended in your water, they can cling to your brush as well. So you do have to watch that. So you could actually do that, although you can see by the other examples I gave you, with simple paint, not metallic paint, you can get a definite shiny effect. So where would you use something like this? If I'm not using it in my painting for creating things like a golden horn, I might be able to use it for things that are a little bit more 2D anyway. Something like this peacock feather, for example, has this really sort of metallic type of shimmer to the feathers, and I could definitely do that with these colors. That could definitely be used in something like this. So there's a really good example of what to do with the metallic paints. Now let's talk about some other ideas. What about the wings of a dragonfly? Wings of a dragonfly are very shiny, it's very sort of almost metallic, right? And but they're also a little bit see-through, so you may not necessarily want to add colors, maybe this one here. But did you know that you can take something like iridescent medium and add it to your regular watercolors? So you can buy the metallic paints and work from those, or you can take your regular paints and add some iridescent medium to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of this, and I'm going to put some on my palette here, something that I can just mix into my color. All right, so here's where I'm really going to use a different brush. I'm going to rinse that in my water, and I can see all those little flecks swirling around. Let me move this up a little bit so you can see. Okay, so this is the iridescent medium, and you can see it's got these little tiny flecks. Oh, the camera's going to have trouble with this. But you can see the little tiny flecks of metal within silver flecks within the medium. All right, so I'm going to take a color. So let's say, for example, I want to paint this peacock feather. So this peacock feather has this really vibrant turquoisey color here. All right, so I want to get that turquoise color, and so I'm going to use maybe some, I'll use a little bit of cobalt turquoise. I'm going to zoom out a little bit now that you've seen it up close. A little bit of cobalt turquoise, a little bit of cerulean blue. Okay, so I've got that nice sort of turquoisey color, and I can mix some of this into it. And I get something very similar to what comes out of these pans, right? So you can add this to your existing paints. The problem is, and it's not really a problem, it's just something you have to watch out for, is to make sure that you are keeping them separate. It's kind of like, you know, if you get glitter in your coffee, it's not coming out. And so if I were painting this peacock feather, I would get this nice shimmery color here. So I'm going to rinse this out of my brush, and I'm going to paint one without the glitter. Just to see how different they are. You know, I'm not sure how much the camera will pick up because, you know, this will have to dry first, of course, but we'll see what this looks like in a minute, just to compare those two to see how different they are. You can kind of see it, but things are going to have to dry first. Okay, so the iridescent medium is great for adding to your regular watercolors, and I personally find that you can add, like, it shows up more with darker colors. So if I were to pick, let's use a maybe an alizarin crimson. Okay, so I'm going to take alizarin crimson, bring it over here. I'll bring some of this medium to it. Now, if you want to have it even more sparkly, then you can add more medium to it. But I will add some to this and just do a little circle here, just to see how that dries. All right. So we're going to see how those dry, and we're going to make the comparison. Now this one has the glitter in it. Let's do one without, just to make that comparison. I should have lined them up the same way, but it's just a test paper. Now, the one thing you can do with these, which really makes the iridescence show, is they have now something like you can find black watercolor paper. These metallics work fantastic on black. They will show up really well. So you do need to have your paint like softened up, like I said, you know, with, you know, wet each of your colors to make sure that you get good pigment, because if you put it on too thin, nothing much shows. But when you put it on black, for example, it will really show. I don't happen to have any black paper. No, I don't have any. So I was just taking a look here over my shoulder. I don't think I have any. So that would have been a good thing to have for this demonstration, but I only kind of decided last night what I was going to do. All right, so we don't have any black, but it will show up really well on black and dark colors and things like that. So if I were to take and paint, this is Payne's Gray, I'll just paint a little patch here, and then I'll paint something into this, and once it's dry, I'll paint something into it, and we'll see what happens. It might reactivate some of this color, so I have to be careful. But on actual black watercolor paper, this would show up really nice. So if you've ever been to the art store recently, you'll notice that this black watercolor paper is something that is, it's not that it's new, it's just sort of coming about right now and becoming a little bit more popular. So rinse that out. Really giving it a good rinse here because it really needs to have that. Yeah, you can begin to see now that even though the paper, let me zoom in a little bit here. My blue, okay, so here you can see the flecks shining. That looks like wet paper, or it looks like wet paint at the moment, but it's actual shine. One thing that is hard to show on camera is the effect of metallics, but that is giving you that shimmery finish. This one still is actually, you know, these two are still really wet and so on, but it'll work for that. Now imagine, you can get creative here with this. Imagine different ways that you can use this, right? It's kind of like it's not a new thing, but it might be new to you. And you've got all these colors and you're wondering, well, yeah, but you know, what am I going to do with it? Like, there are artists who have used metallics in their paintings and with great success. Look at Klimt, all right? Gustav Klimt, you know, definitely famous for that. Now, okay, he used a lot of gold leaf with his paintings, but if you're painting, you could definitely use some metallics within your painting to get a similar effect. And yes, you do have to change your water a little bit more frequently to answer that question. I definitely would, if I stirred this up, this is my water now, if I stirred this up, you might see, you can see the things swirling around, right? So that is the metallic effect that is floating in the water, and it actually is little tiny flecks, you know, speck-sized tiny flecks of metallic metal, basically. So that is suspended in this, basically this medium. And so the iridescent medium doesn't really have any color, but the flecks are kind of silvery. And so that's what gives you this. And I would take this jar and give it a good shake, because it will kind of settle in the medium. And this is actually a really old jar. They have new jars now that are shaped like this, and you can see this one's kind of separated, right? So I would have to shake this one up. And the reason I have two jars is because I inherited one. But yeah, so I've got this, this is the newer version. And I suppose all the other companies, the art companies, have a similar product, right? Like most companies will have their own version of a, you know, a iridescent medium. You know, I did say we would talk about mediums, so this is kind of the first of the mediums that we're going to be talking about. And this is still taking a little while to dry. My paint spray's getting there. Let's just try painting, let's say this silvery paint, because I think that'll show up most. We'll paint some of this silvery paint on this. So let's do a little shape here. And you see it's going to show up far better on black than it did on the white paper. And that's just, you know, contrast, right? I have to rinse that out. I also have to be careful not to contaminate my metallics with my regular colors too, because that's going to shift those colors in there. All right, so I could put that on there and that would show. And I might have to put another layer on. This has probably reactivated that under layer, but if you were working on white or on black watercolor paper, that could work out really nice. So you could do, like a couple of weeks ago, I showed a stenciling idea. You can imagine that if you used some of this metallic medium, I just put it away. If you used some of the iridescent medium, you know, with the stenciling pattern, that could be really nice as a, you know, maybe a background on something. And if you were doing, I think I mentioned this, but a geode or something like that, you know, and you have those little veins of that metallic color through it, that could be a really nice application for something like this. Or just get creative. Lettering, you know, lettering is something that is very, very common now with incorporating into your designs with watercolor. I'm just reading, what about spattering make a shimmery effect on water? Not so much. I think, you know, if I were just to get the shimmery effect on water, you need that really high contrast. You know, I'm going to go back to my reference to the metal here that I have painted, and I've got, you know, kind of these were like, this was a whole showroom, so there was like a million lights in there. So there's a lot of little sort of white reflections happening in this horn. And so I did that with masking fluid. So I think before spattering metallic paint, I would be more inclined to spatter masking fluid in the case of using it for the shimmer on water. I see where your head is going on that one, you know, and definitely makes sense, except that it won't be as if it will probably not show up as much as you think it will. These little flecks they're kind of subtle, right? All this stuff is kind of subtle, and if you put it on top of another color, it doesn't show that much. If I were to just take this medium and paint it on, this is just the medium, and paint it on here, it shows up when it's wet, but when it's dry, it won't show up very much. So it'll look like there's a little shimmer, but not quite what you're probably thinking. But my suggestion to you is to play. That's really the best way, because I think when it comes to something like this and you have these metallic colors, you know, this is something that you can experiment with and just, you know, just play with it. Come up with your own ideas of how to use it. I almost hesitate to give you too many ideas because, you know, you might get stuck on those. But, you know, get creative with it. And as for the spattering, yeah, use it. But I would maybe use it in terms of like using it with the stencil or something, just for a little tiny bit of shimmer. I don't think you're going to get quite a lot of shimmer by using your metallics. They're more subtle. I mean, you can see how challenging it is just for the camera to pick up the effect. So if you were standing across the room and you were trying to put shimmer on water with metallic paint, I don't think it's going to have the same impact. You'd have to almost be standing at just the right angle for the metal flecks to catch the light, and then you'd see it. See, I have to hold this paper up very often in order for you to see the shimmer, to see the difference between this one and this one, right? I have to hold it in a certain light for the light to catch it. So that's why I'm saying it's probably not going to have quite the same effect, the same contrast as using, say, masking fluid. But I think that these could be really lovely. I'm dying to do a dragonfly with some metallic in its wings. I think that could be really quite lovely, because that's the sort of thing that is really very, very, very subtle to begin with, right? So that kind of a shimmer. There's even some kinds of flowers and plants that have this little bit of almost metallic type of shimmer in it as well. All kinds of things. You know, if you were doing, for example, a portrait and you've got a woman and she's got face paint on or something like that, oh, that would be really cool to use, right? That could have a really dramatic effect. Dramatic in that, you know, at a certain light, it'd be like a real nice surprise to see that light shining off of the metal pieces, right? And so that would look really cool. And my little mini copper pot here, now it's pretty much dry now, and you can definitely see the metallic effect in here. But where I put in my regular paint, it has kind of hidden that that effect, right? Which isn't so bad, because I mean, things don't shine in the shadows, do they? So that's not so bad. But as far as getting those bright shiny objects, I would still be using white paper or masking fluid for highlights and things like that. So let me see here. Let's go back to our peacock feather here. Let's give this peacock feather a try here. And what I want to do here is I'm going to paint this peacock feather, and I'm going to use the iridescent medium to give it that shimmery look. See, on camera, you probably don't notice the shimmer as much as I'm seeing it in person, right? So I don't know, if I hold it in certain lights, maybe you can see a little bit of the shimmer. Probably in this coppery area, you can see the shimmer a little bit. But there's definitely some shimmer to this. So I'm going to set this aside for a minute. And I'm just going to paint as normal. So I'm going to start with, you know, a nice dark center. And I'm using, this is a core color right now that I'm using called Indanthrone. Gorgeous color. I have several brands in my palette. I'm going to use a little bit of Payne's Gray into this as well, just to darken it a little bit more, because I want that high contrast. So this is the middle part of the feather. The next part, I don't want to paint next to that because it's wet, but I'm going to go into maybe a, I'll go into a burnt sienna here. So I'm going to go burnt sienna, maybe even put a little Queen Gold into this. It's actually a little more greenish than I think this is. So I'm going to put a little bit of, stick a little leaf green in there just to green it up a bit. That's probably a little closer. I wanted it a little bit more brassy. So I'm going to come around the feather. And I'm just going to do this quickly just so I can get the effect here, but nice abstract shape. All right, and I'm going to go now just with leaf green. Leaf green is this really sort of a lime green kind of color. I'm just going to leave the slightest space in between so that they don't bleed together. Actually, I do have it touching there a little bit. It's bleeding a little, but oh well. Right, so if I were making, say, a card or something for somebody, you know, this is maybe something that I could do quickly. And I'm just coming back to my blue, my Indanthrone blue. I'll come around this. Letting those two touch. Coming around here as well. So I'm not doing high realism or anything like that. This is just to show the metallic effect, but I'm going to go into some cobalt blue for this area. I think there's a little bit of maybe cobalt turquoise mixed in here too. We'll see what that looks like. Just a little bit in here and there. And so far I'm not using any metallics at this point. Do I prefer the iridescent medium to the metallic paints? I don't know that I say that there's actually a preference. I find the effect very, very similar. But if you didn't want to go out and invest in all the pans, you could just buy the medium and use the colors you have. Definitely, if you use the iridescent medium, then you can probably get more range of color than you could just with the pans, right? The pans, you're a little bit limited. I mean, I suppose you could mix and match those two, but you don't know what the colors are, so you're kind of guessing at some of it. All right, so I'm just going to do some of these little feathery bits that come out. Probably the easiest way for you to try this out is to just get yourself some of the medium and play with it. I do find that the effect is really similar, so all right, so now the one, okay, here's the one advantage to using the pans as opposed to using the iridescent medium. If I paint this first with regular paint, and then I have to go over all of these with the iridescent medium, that's going to be challenging. Whereas if I'm just painting it in the first place with, say, this brown color here, you know, if I were to do that instead, then I wouldn't have to worry about that. So it's more of a one step, I suppose, if you have the pans. But I could also take my color that I'm using and add the iridescence to it, right? Don't forget that. So I'm using some sepia here, maybe a little Payne's gray to get it real dark. And I bring this over here and get some of that iridescent medium into it. I could be doing it in one step. So there's all kinds of ways to work with this, right? You can experiment and have fun with it. But you get the idea. Okay, so I'm going to just do a little bit more here. Trying to go fast so we don't take all day doing this, but I actually have some of the iridescent medium mixed into this color now, so getting 2 for 1. This feather's a little bit broken. Had it a while. Really quite beautiful, these feathers. Always have to look at the direction of the feathers to get them looking right. All right, how long they are and so on. Something like that. Okay, so we've got pretty much the idea of it now, and I'm going to take the iridescent medium and I like the old style jar that you can open more easily. Those childproof ones are really kind of difficult to open for grown-ups too. So I'm going to take some of my iridescent medium here. All right, so I have some of this. That's kind of a lot. I don't want to put it all on at once, so I'm going to mix a little bit on my palette here and just brush it on. Ooh, some of this is still wet, so I'm going to have a hard time, but try and do it gently, just to get a little bit of shimmer into this. Now, this could be really nice on something like this. It gives you that same type of shimmer that is on the actual feather. You know, think of all the birds that have this type of iridescence, right? A mallard duck and loons and all kinds of birds have that. Peacocks aren't the only ones. So coming in, you may not be able to see that. That's why this is a little bit of a tricky demo to show, because it's really subtle. It's really hard to see. But let's see if I can tip it in the light. Maybe you can get a bit of the effect. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. Don't look too close here. It's just pretty rough. But there's that shimmery effect that you can see I've just added on. And the thing about using it in a painting is that you can do it and it will, sorry, it doesn't want to focus there. You can put it on and it may not be really obvious to the person until, you know, just they hit it at the right angle and then you see it. Yeah, you're right, Margot. Sometimes there is that feeling of, you know, being more crafty once you start putting metallics in your painting. But as I mentioned, there are artists such as Gustav Klimt who has used metallic effect in his artwork to great effect. And as I said, it's, you know, he used gold leaf and that sort of thing, but definitely, you know, if used tastefully, how about we say it that way? Tastefully, you could do that. You could do that. I have not used a lot of metallics or iridescence in my actual paintings, but I have painted a lot of watercolor cards, and I've used it quite freely in those instances. And but I also I had a painting, for example, of Christmas ornaments, and I did everything to that one. I put in iridescent medium. I put in glitter. You know, it just seemed to suit that type of subject matter. So I think a lot of it depends on, you know, the application. I think if I were trying to paint a still life and I had this copper pot in there and I used metallic paint like this, I think that might be a little bit, well, I hate to use the word, but maybe a bit cheesy. But, you know, that's just my personal opinion on the matter. But I do think that it could be used in certain ways that could be quite tasteful. So depending on how you're using it, I think it could be very nice. Metallic paints just needs to be something that you play with. As I said, if you're kind of more of a graphic artist as opposed to, say, a person who paints a whole still life or something like that. So you have sort of graphic elements within your painting, words or something like that. Maybe you have, I don't know, let's say the word love. Okay, so you have the word love in there. You're doing something for a wedding couple or something like that. You want to have something sort of a little bit more glitz to it. Then go ahead. Try it. The one thing that's great about art is there really aren't any rules. There's opinions, but there's no rules. So just because you don't like somebody else doesn't like it, that doesn't mean that you can't use it. You can use whatever you want. That's the whole fun of being an artist, right? You get to do what you want. I'm just here to throw out ideas and introduce you to maybe some new concepts. So here's your iridescent colors again. Up here you can really see some of them have sort of that two-tone thing going on, kind of cool. The metallics do seem to be a little bit more shimmery than where I've added the iridescent medium. Now that doesn't mean to say that I couldn't add more iridescent medium on top of this. I definitely could. If I were to take my my brush and paint over top of that, it would definitely get more shiny. No question. I could just go right from the bottle right on top of this, and I could definitely make this more shimmery. If you do 2 and 3 layers on top, yeah, definitely going to get shimmery, more shimmery. So but the only thing I'd say is just, don't contaminate your regular paints with this. And contaminate makes it sound like it's a bad thing. It's not. It's just, once it's in there, you won't get it out. And then you'll be wanting to use your paints for other things, and it would be kind of not a good idea. All right, so you can see how much more shimmery. Now this is just as shimmery as that now. So it's just how much you're using in it. So you can make it as subtle or as pronounced as you want. I put quite a bit on this silvery heart, so it's showing up pretty well, especially on that dark. So I guess anywhere where there's contrast, you're going to see the color a little bit more. So that's going to wrap it up, I guess, for today. I'm just going to have another last look at some of my questions. If you're enjoying these watercolor demos that I do every week, by all means, give me a thumbs up. That'd be nice. And let your painting friends know, because we need to have, I need to let more people know, so that I have people to talk to. Get lonely over here. Okay, so I wonder whether doing a top layer of glazing would be, well, okay, the top layer of glazing is just basically what I did here. Yes, and you could do that, and I kind of did that here with my peacock feather as well. Definitely a hummingbird or something like that. That would be another idea for using your metallic paints. And M and I. Oh, metallics and iridescent. Okay, for paintings. Yeah, I think Deborah's asking if using any of these types of things for a beach scene would be out of place, and I think it would. I mean, those things aren't iridescent to begin with, so I don't think I would be using it in that case. But like I said, things that actually are in real life metallic, such as this peacock feather, such as dragonfly wings, such as geodes and things like that. Yeah, those kinds of things, that might be more appropriate. I definitely wouldn't put it all over everything. You can get carried away, just like everything. You can get carried away with stuff, right? So Aw, thank you very much, Marilyn. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. And if you do, yeah, if you do click your notification, that's that little bell icon, and you tend to forget each week that I'm doing these, then hit that, and you'll get a notification that I'm live, so that you won't forget. All right. So we're going to wrap it up for today. Thank you very much for joining me. Try out some of these metallic paints or the iridescent medium, and have a little fun with it. I encourage you to experiment and play with it to find out what the full potential is. I only have a few ideas, but I'm sure you guys have a whole lot more. So let me know what you come up with. Add it in the comments if you want. Even after this ends, you can put a comment under the video there and let me know what you're up to. All right, have fun. See you next week. Bye for now.